Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Buri, and in today's video I'm going to talk a bit about doing a hybrid job which involves working from home and also how it has started to change my life for the better. So for those of you that don't know, recently I have started a new job. So although I'm still working full-time in the same council that I was in previously, I have now switched departments. I don't really want to say too much in regards to my job title and such, but to put it in layman's terms, I now do legal admin. And it is a massive change because I used to do a front of house job since I was a receptionist, but I find that going into, let's say, a back-end admin job is refreshing, especially because I don't have to deal with the general public anymore. Now, in terms of my previous job, it's a similar case with practically every job I've done so far, where honestly I liked the people that I worked with because obviously in every job I've done I get on with my colleagues and such, but there were little things that just really irritated me. So in the case of my now third job, which I recently quit 2 months ago, basically there was a restructure, so all the administrative teams in the department I was working in were affected. And the jobs that we were doing previously were deleted, and we all were job matched to new roles. So directors were looking at our work plans as well as our job descriptions, and because you had more staff than roles, everyone had to go through a ring-fenced interview. Now, I hate doing job interviews because obviously with autism as well as inattentive ADHD, it's very difficult to mask. And although I know myself, my credentials, my skills, my experience, it's very hard for me to articulate myself in job interviews, especially when competency questions come up, because then you have to use the very convoluted STAR method, which is something I really hate. But in the interview I did for my new role, which I would have been offered at the time, the questions were quite simple, where I had to talk about different software I use and such, which is easy enough because I had so many examples prepped at the top of my head, you wouldn't believe it. But in layman's terms, in the restructure, I was offered a role, but I declined because a week after I found out about this result, I resigned because I got to a point where honestly, I was mentally checked out. As much as I liked the people I worked with, the job itself made me fed up, especially where the commute was concerned, because I used to commute a good hour door to door. So that was 2 hours a day, 10 hours a week I would spend commuting. So a 36-hour work week would become a 46-hour work week if that commute every week was factored in. And for me personally, when it comes to commuting to a job, it's not really something I enjoy doing unless the commute is very short, because for me, I get mentally drained, and that was one of the biggest reasons as to why I declined the role that I was offered, because the commute would still be nearly an hour, and even though I would have had a couple of days working from home, I don't want to do a long commute for a job. So in the current job that I do, my commute is about 40 to 45 minutes, and I now do 9 to 5 instead of awkward hours because due to the clientele that we used to get in my previous workplace, my hours Monday to Thursday were 10 a.m. to 6:15, 9 to 5 on Fridays. And if you had late appointments Monday to Thursday as reception, you would have to cover due to safeguarding. So sometimes I'd finish at 6:30, sometimes I'd finish 7 o'clock, and by the time I would get home, I would be so knackered, especially from a mental standpoint, that I would have no time for myself for the rest of the day. Whereas now, when I finish work, as soon as it's 5 o'clock, I go home. And when I come home, I usually get in between 5:45 and 6 o'clock, giving me a good 5 hours for myself. And working from home as well is a bonus because typically Wednesday is now my work from home day, although I would alternate on a Friday. So there's some weeks where I go in 4 days a week in the office, sometimes 3 days a week. So this week I would be in the office 3 days a week because I worked from home yesterday since Friday is going to be short-staffed. And then today I also work from home. So in a sense, when I'm working from home, I have a reprieve because I can sleep in, I can get up, still do my work of course, but also I have intervals where I can take care of personal tasks like household chores or errands. So this morning I went to an InPost locker to post a package for an item that I'm selling, because for those that don't know, I do kind of have a side hustle where I sell second-hand items on Vinted, and I have made just over £300 doing that. So this week I have earned £18 selling 3 items, because usually during my lunch breaks I post items, or if I'm working from home I can use an interval to go post items because there's lots of shops or post offices nearby. But the point is, I actually have time for myself that I've given back. So it's like if I'm in the office, essentially I have given myself 30 to 40 minutes of free time back, because I know that I am not doing a 1-hour commute to a job, and it's really refreshing. I mean, I've noticed health-wise as well, I'm not as tired as I used to be. I mean, the only reason I've been physically and mentally tired is because of the heat, because in the UK we have a massive heat wave, so it's well over 30 degrees. The weather is absolutely humid, and as much as I like the summer, I really don't like humid heat or air, if that makes sense, because you feel sticky and dirty, and even when you shower practically twice or more a day, you still feel sticky, and that's exactly how I feel, which isn't really good, especially when I'm sleeping. And when I'm working as well, if I'm working in excessive heat, I do tend to zone out because my concentration level can be quite low. So I have to really think about what I'm doing. But if I'm working in the office, I do sit in a cool room. So normally I can book a room for myself, which is cool enough until the aircon gets fixed, which is good. And there's plenty of meeting rooms that I can choose from, provided that they are not booked out for, well, meetings. Although if I'm at home, I normally have my portable fan on my desk. I'll just have that running, although I have considered getting air conditioning in my room, but I'm not really sure, because I know with air conditioning you have the risk of bacteria and such. And then of course there's the sudden change in temperature, because you are in a cold room, then you go out in the heat, and then you come back in the cold room. So I don't really know if I get an aircon, but I would probably get a larger fan that I can just put somewhere, especially because since I now work from home, I've had to kind of reorganize my desk so it sort of fits the whole work from home setup. So I now have a large monitor which I use, although the large monitor that I have, I actually got that when I was working in my old job, because obviously my ex-line manager advised me to get a monitor in case I got a role, the restructure, provided that I would have been working from home. So I have a large monitor on the side of my desk now. Then I've got all my ergonomic equipment already, where I can just situate my laptop on my laptop stand, because I have all of that at home. So I have the ergonomic chair, a footrest, wrist rest, mouse rest. So pretty much everything is set up at home. So when it comes to working from home, obviously I have to take my laptop with me, but I don't really take much else besides that, my notebook and my headphones, because with the laptop I do have a charger for the monitor that I can use on my laptop, because I actually don't use my laptop charger much unless I'm sitting in a cool room if I'm working in the office. But I think the point I'm trying to explain here before I ramble on is working from home, I feel like is something I enjoy doing. I mean, it's a big change because every job I've had prior involved me coming into an office or a site every single day. But I think going forward, if I obviously do any more jobs in the future, I would never go back to 5 days a week in an office. You can never convince me to go back to 5 days a week. So if I ever apply for office jobs and they have a work from home option, that's a total bonus. And I think in terms of socializing, when I'm on my own as well, I need that time on my own. But I think with working from home as well, when it comes to actually getting things done, I mean, the only thing for me is sometimes I may get distracted, but I'm one of those people where if you leave me alone to get on with my tasks, I will do them, because every job I've had, I've always kind of had the initiative to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't like being micromanaged because, I mean, in my second job, when I worked as an admin assistant for minimum wage, some of the managers were a bit funny. So the operations manager would just kind of hover over your desk sometimes, try to figure out what you're doing. And I hate things like that because it's almost like you don't trust me to do my job, or you're making me sort of second guess everything. And you know, for me personally, if you just let me get on with it, then I don't have a problem. And obviously if I've got issues, I'll talk to my manager or my colleagues, but I don't like being micromanaged. Although preferably at some point I would like to be self-employed, because I do require autonomy. So I think for me what it is if I really wanted to be a manager, I would not want to be a manager for another person's company. You know, if I'm working for other people, I'd rather do a job where I just go in, do my hours and go home, which at least I can do now. So like I said, as soon as it's 5 o'clock, I can go home knowing I'm not responsible for anybody else but myself, which is a good thing. And you know, if I was self-employed, yes, it wouldn't be easy, but because I have an entrepreneurial mindset and I'm used to starting things on my own, that kind of helps. So for me, it's like, if I really want to be a manager of something, it would have to be my own company, because at least I'm responsible for everything. I can oversee the operations, rather than me being blamed for something somebody else does and being overridden all the time, because that typically happens when you are a manager in another person's company. But I would definitely say, maybe it depends on individuals, but if you do have some sort of neurodivergence, whether it's autism or ADHD or something, and you don't really like social jobs as such, I think working from home would definitely be beneficial. Although I suppose it's quite difficult these days to get a hybrid, let alone fully work from home job. I mean, because I got my first council job technically through a family friend, I was lucky enough in a sense to be in a position where if there were internal roles going in the council I work for, I can at least be the first person to know, because the role that I'm in, I found out through the internal site. I applied on my own accord, and I'm basically an internal hire. So in a sense, that gives me an advantage, which I'm really grateful for. But I think in general, you know, working from home, I suppose for anyone who falls under the category I mentioned, is quite beneficial. I mean, for me as well, it is nice to not do customer service, because at least I'm not dealing with difficult queries from people who sort of get aggressive with you about issues that have nothing to do with you, things like that. So yeah, I guess all I have to say is working from home for me has changed my life. I mean, doing a hybrid job in general has honestly changed my life, and I am glad I left, because I mean, I have spoken to some ex-colleagues, and from what I've heard about recent changes, things aren't really looking good, so it just makes me glad I got out when I did. But I don't know, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will probably post more videos like this soon, and on occasion I will have visuals as I'm talking and music in the background. So this is a new format, but I hope you like it. Until next time, bye for now.